One-on-one scoring opportunities with the shooter versus the goalie, where players are running uncontested towards the opponent's net, are otherwise known as breakaways. Goalies are not expected to make the save on a breakaway. If they do, that's fantastic, but the reality is that the players in front of the goalie already let the goalie down by allowing a breakaway, and if the goalie ends up bailing them out, as we say, at best you can expect them to do so 50% of the time. Technically, there are three types of breakaways: an uncontested, clear-cut breakaway, as discussed in this video, a partial breakaway, where there is a person within a stick length of you, which is discussed in a future video, and then a breakaway that's not quite clear-cut and not quite partial. Let's call it a contested breakaway. The defining feature being, it doesn't allow you to do probably the most important setup move for your breakaway, what we call a banana curl. Whenever you have time, you shouldn't run straight at the net on a breakaway. You should take an angle, ideally in the shape of a banana, towards your proper side, which presents many more options for the shooter to score as they come across the net instead of directly at it. From a player's perspective, all players should have at least one breakaway move that they've perfected, that they can go to when they have time to pull it off, giving them the best chance of scoring. There is very little net to see in box lacrosse considering the size of the goalie, so if you see net, it's usually not a bad play to just shoot, albeit disguising the shot as best as possible. Otherwise, a move based on the timing of fakes and muscle memory with the stick is usually the best bet. Often, I had a breakaway move that I thought would work on a particular goalie already mapped out in my head before the game, with the understanding that if I got a clear-cut breakaway, that's the move I would go to. My quote go-to move, if I was able to move east-west across the front of the net, was usually 2 high fakes, then dropping the stick to an underhand shot to the 5-hole inside the goalie's short side leg. This move is especially good against reactionary goalies. The same 2 high fake setup could also be used to set up a sidearm or underhand shot to the goalie's far side top corner. Most moves, or quote series of fakes, should start and finish on the player's proper floor side, but occasionally they can finish slightly on the player's wrong floor side, for instance if they decide to run past the goalie, or if they have no choice but to approach the net from their wrong floor side during a breakaway. The remedial version of a fake series would be to quickly fake short side and then shoot to the goalie's far side, or vice versa. Speaking primarily to stick fakes, faking a goalie usually consists of a quick quarter turn of the stick, aka snap fakes.
Turn your fist in. That's it, right there. Now stick up. Yes. Up and right, right there. Up to here. And
high, low, left, right, or even behind the back. The stick is most often held by the player's ear when faking, and it's a slight action of the top wrist and hand, avoiding any bottom hand faking, with the bottom hand only forming a hollow donut, allowing the top hand to do its work. Some folks say to fake away from the goalie's stick first, in other words, finish stick side on the goalie. Another saying is to never shoot where you faked, or to change levels, meaning if you fake high, then finish low, or if you fake short side, then finish far side. Prior to starting the breakaway drill, coaches can demo a banana curl and perhaps a couple of developmentally appropriate breakaway moves for the players. Have players lined up in 2 groups at center floor, with one group lined up facing a goalie at one end and the other group facing the opposite end. Variation number 1 is for fun. In variation number 1A, put one of the coaches in net during the breakaway competition using softballs or tennis balls. Otherwise, in variation number 1B, do a breakaway competition allowing trick shots from the players, which would otherwise be highly discouraged by coaches in favor of breakaways executed under normal, full-speed, game-like conditions. Variation number 2 is the team competition. Teams are usually divided up as either lefties versus righties, as offensive players versus defensive players, or in some other creative way to make the teams with equal numbers. Each team then sends one player at a time on a breakaway on the goalie. If one team scores and not the other at any time during the competition, the team that doesn't score must run from sideboards to sideboards before the next 2 players get to go. Once again, it is important for players to practice breakaways with speed in order for them to be able to translate it to the game. Sometimes it's easy to pull off a bunch of fakes at a reduced speed, but those fakes would not be possible if running at full speed. The most common error for goalies is usually standing too deep or too far out of the net, and it's important for them to find that sweet spot. Usually it's best to start a little bit further out to cut the angle down, and then take some shuffle steps backwards as the player gets closer to the net. Goalies can also practice tracking rebounds after the shot and passing the ball back to the player that just shot, i.e. practicing their breakout outlets that they would do in a game if they're able to corral the rebound. Once everyone has had a shot from both teams, the team with the least amount of goals scored has to sprint the length of the floor and back, with coaches keeping track of the total goals by each team. Variation number 3 is the game to 7. To add further competition, play a game of lefties versus righties up to 7 goals, with the losing team doing push-ups, sit-ups, bodyweight squats, sprints, etc. Another way to set up the game is 2 teams, 1 on each bench, with 5 or 10 balls across the restraining line. One player then comes off each bench at a time, and if the player misses their shot, they have to scoop the rebound, put the ball back on the restraining line, and get in the bench before the next player off the bench can take their turn. If the shooter scores, the next player is allowed to come on immediately. Variation number 4 is an individual competition, or every player for themselves, as they say. I never liked the idea of single elimination breakaway competitions, as too many players inevitably ended up seated on the sideline not getting reps. As a creative solution, my buddy Jeff Shatler came up with the idea of continuing the competition until one player scores 3 goals in a row, with all players having a chance for a rebuttal, which is the best way in our opinion. Variation number 5 is the hit the net game, which is especially useful if players are having trouble hitting the net in games. It can be the same as any of the previous variations, except for every ball that misses the net during the drill, counting until everyone has shot at least once. Players have to sprint from one sideboard or end board to the other, starting from 0 each time after everyone has shot. In this way, players also get a little bit tired out as the competition progresses, which makes the breakaway scenario a little bit more game specific. Generally in a game, you've played a full shift of defense before ever getting a breakaway, which changes things and makes players less prone to be able to execute on the breakaway due to the fatigue factor. Lastly, in variation number 6, there's a chaser. One line of players starts with no balls, and the first player in this line has to chase the first player in the line with balls, starting 2 to 5 meters behind them, looking for a trail check. Mark the starting distance with pylons if necessary. This becomes more of a partial breakaway scenario, depending on how far the coach starts the chaser behind the ball carrier, potentially limiting the ability to take a banana curl depending on how fast each player is. Speed kills, as they say.